Have you ever felt a chill that has nothing to do with the weather? A coldness that settles deep in your bones, right in the center of your chest, warning you that something in your own home, in your own life, is terribly, terribly wrong. That is exactly how Ethan Caldwell felt that rainy Tuesday night in Seattle. If you looked at him, you would see a man who had everything. Ethan was 35, handsome, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of a tech empire, and a bank account that could buy small countries. But if you looked closer, really looked into his eyes, you wouldn't see a powerful CEO. You would see a father drowning in guilt, a man who would trade every single dollar, every luxury car, and this massive, cold mansion just to hear his 3 sons laugh again. Outside, the storm was raging against the glass walls of the estate. Thunder shook the ground, but inside the nursery the silence was even louder. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Ethan stood on a chair, his trembling fingers fumbling with a small device no bigger than a button. A hidden camera. Can you imagine the shame? A father spying on his own home? He felt dirty. He felt like a traitor. But he had no choice. He looked down at the 3 cribs lined up against the wall. Noah, Liam, Oliver, his triplets. They were 2 years old, but they didn't stand. They didn't run. They didn't scream for toys or throw food. They lay there, still as porcelain dolls, staring at the ceiling with empty, glassy eyes. Ever since the accident, that cursed accident on the highway that took his wife, Sarah, and left his boys paralyzed and mute, this house had become a mausoleum. The doctors said it was severe spinal trauma. They said the boys would never walk. They said the trauma had stolen their voices. But lately, Ethan felt a different kind of fear. "Ethan, darling," the voice came from the hallway, sharp and sweet, like sugar-coated glass. Ethan nearly dropped the camera. He quickly tucked it behind the motion sensor of the smoke detector and jumped down, smoothing his suit. Vanessa Sterling walked in. Oh, you have to picture Vanessa. She was the kind of woman who stopped traffic. Tall, blonde, impeccable. She was wearing a white silk robe that probably cost more than a car, and her face was a mask of perfect concern. She was Ethan's fiancée, the woman who had promised to help him heal, to be a mother to his broken children. But why did the air in the room always seem to get colder when she entered? "What are you doing in here so late?" Vanessa asked, her eyes scanning the room, landing on the cribs with a look that, well, if you blinked, you'd miss it, a look of disgust. "I was just checking on them," Ethan lied, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Noah looked pale earlier." Vanessa sighed, walking over to him and placing a manicured hand on his chest. "You worry too much, my love. That's why you have me. And that maid." Her tone changed on the last 2 words. "That maid. Elena?" Ethan asked. "What about her?" "I don't want to be the one to say it, Ethan," Vanessa whispered, leaning in close, smelling of expensive perfume and malice. "But she's rough with them. Yesterday I saw her yanking Oliver's arm. And she's always whispering things in that foreign language of hers. It's creepy. I think she hates them because they're disabled. You know how some people are." Ethan stiffened. Elena Ross, the new nanny. She had been with them for only 3 weeks. She was young, maybe 28, with dark, messy hair and eyes the color of warm honey. She was quiet. She wore simple clothes. And yes, she was beautiful in a way that didn't need silk robes or diamonds. But an abuser. "She came with excellent references, Vanessa," Ethan said, defending her, though a seed of doubt had already been planted in his stomach. "That's what manipulators do, isn't it? They plant seeds and wait for the weeds to strangle you." "References can be faked," Vanessa snapped, her mask slipping for a second before she smiled again. "I just want what's best for our family. I think we should fire her. I can take care of them until we find a professional nurse. Someone medical." Ethan looked at his boys. Liam was awake, blinking slowly. When Vanessa moved closer to the crib, the baby didn't reach for her. He flinched, a tiny, almost invisible movement. He closed his eyes tight. That was the moment. That was the moment Ethan decided he wasn't crazy. A father knows. A father knows when his child is afraid. "I'll think about it," Ethan said, his voice flat. "Let's go to bed." He led Vanessa out of the room, turning off the main light. But he didn't turn off the camera. Later that night, the mansion was asleep. The storm had settled into a steady, depressing drizzle. Ethan sat in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched on his mahogany desk. His laptop was open. The screen glowed with the black and white feed from the nursery. He was supposed to be on a flight to New York the next morning. He had told Vanessa he was leaving early, but he wasn't going anywhere. He was going to watch. "Please," he whispered to the empty room. "Please, Elena, don't be a monster." On the screen, the nursery door opened slowly. Ethan leaned forward, his breath catching in his throat. The digital clock on the screen read 2:14 a.m. Who goes into a nursery at 2 in the morning? A figure stepped inside. It was Elena. She was wearing oversized sweatpants and an old t-shirt. She looked tired. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun. She closed the door softly behind her. Ethan watched, his hand gripping the edge of the desk so hard his knuckles turned white. Vanessa's words echoed in his head. She's rough with them. She hates them. Elena stood in the center of the room for a moment. She looked at the door, as if checking to make sure it was locked. Then she turned toward the cribs. Ethan's heart stopped. She was moving with purpose. She reached into her pocket and pulled something out. On the grainy black and white screen, it looked like a small bottle. Oil, medicine, poison. She approached Noah's crib first. She lowered the railing. "Don't hurt him," Ethan hissed at the screen, his finger hovering over the phone to call the police. "Don't you dare touch him." But then something strange happened. Elena didn't grab the baby. She didn't shake him. She leaned down, bringing her face inches from the child's face, and even without audio on the camera, Ethan saw her shoulders moving. She was breathing? No. She was sighing. She lifted Noah out of the crib. The boy was limp, his legs dangling uselessly. But Elena didn't handle him like a sack of potatoes, the way the previous nurses had. She held him against her chest, supporting his head, rocking him gently. She walked to the window, where the moonlight was filtering through the curtains. Ethan watched, confused. This didn't look like abuse, but then why did Vanessa hate her so much? Why did she lie? Or maybe the horror hadn't started yet. Eleanor laid Noah down on the thick rug in the center of the room. She did the same with Liam. Then Oliver. She lined up the 3 paralyzed boys on the floor. She sat cross-legged in front of them. She rubbed her hands together, warming them up. She applied the oil from the bottle to her palms. And then she grabbed Noah's ankles. Ethan flinched. It looked aggressive. She pushed the boy's legs up toward his chest, bending the knees, hard. Noah's mouth opened. Was he screaming? Ethan couldn't hear. Was he in pain? "What are you doing?" Ethan whispered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. She moved to Liam. She rotated his hips. She massaged his spine with vigorous, strong movements. It wasn't a gentle caress. It was intense. It looked medical. But she was just a maid with no degree, no training. She could snap their fragile bones. Ethan stood up, knocking his chair over. He had to stop this. He had to run upstairs and throw her out of his house. Vanessa was right. She was doing something unauthorized. She was hurting them. He rushed to the door of his study, his hand on the knob, but he froze. He looked back at the screen. Elena had stopped the exercises. She was now lying on the floor next to them, and the boys who never moved, who never showed emotion. Liam's hand was resting on Elena's cheek. Ethan blinked. He walked slowly back to the screen. He zoomed in. Liam, his middle son, the one who had taken the brunt of the impact in the crash, had his tiny, paralyzed hand resting on the maid's face. And Elena, She was weeping. Tears were streaming down her face, glistening in the night vision camera. She was kissing Liam's small hand. She was talking to them, fast and desperate. Ethan sank back into his chair. This wasn't the face of an abuser. This was the face of a woman who loved these children more than her own life. But why the secret midnight sessions? Why the intense physical manipulation? And why did Vanessa want her gone so badly? The camera flickered. The door to the nursery opened again. Ethan gasped. Vanessa walked in, but this wasn't the poised fiancée from earlier. She wasn't wearing her silk robe. She was dressed, still in her day clothes, holding a glass of wine. She looked unstable. She looked angry. Eleanor scrambled to her feet, shielding the boys with her body. Vanessa pointed a finger at Elena, her face twisted in a snarl that made Ethan's blood run cold. He couldn't hear the words, but he could read the body language. It was a threat, a vicious, ugly threat. Vanessa kicked a toy truck across the room. It hit the wall. The boys flinched, all three of them. Ethan felt a rage building in his gut, a fire he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't looking at a misunderstanding anymore. He was looking at a war. And his children were the battlefield. He needed to hear them. He needed to know what they were saying. Ethan realized with a curse that he had forgotten to enable the audio on the live feed. He slammed his fist on the desk. He had to wait. He had to watch. If he went up there now, Vanessa would put on her mask. She would lie. She would say Elena attacked her. He needed proof. Irrefutable proof. He watched as Vanessa stormed out, leaving Elena shaking on the floor, gathering the three boys into her arms as if trying to protect them from a hurricane. "I see you," Ethan whispered, his eyes dark. "I see both of you now." But what he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly guess, was that the physical therapy wasn't the biggest secret in that room. The biggest secret was about to be revealed. And it would change everything Ethan thought he knew about his life, his money, and his future. If you think money solves problems, my friends, you have never been inside the Caldwell mansion. Money can buy the best Italian marble floors, it can buy velvet curtains that block out the sun, and it can buy silence, but it cannot buy warmth, and it certainly cannot buy the truth. The next morning, the house was drowning in that expensive, heavy silence again. The storm had passed, leaving behind a grey, wet Seattle sky. Ethan had left the house at 5 a.m., pretending to go to the airport. He drove his black SUV down the driveway, waited until the security gates closed, and then parked around the corner, hidden by a line of thick pine trees. He wasn't going to New York. He was going to sit in his car, connect to the mansion's Wi-Fi, and watch the camera feed on his tablet. He had enabled the audio this time. He needed to see what happened when the master wasn't home. On the screen, the nursery was bright. The morning light was cold. At 8 a.m. the door opened. It was Vanessa. She didn't look like the loving stepmother-to-be she pretended to be in front of Ethan. She walked in holding her phone to her ear, a cigarette unlit in her other hand. I know, she was saying, her voice tinny through the camera's microphone. "He's leaving today. I have the whole weekend to fix this." "Fix what?" Ethan leaned closer to his tablet. Vanessa walked over to Oliver's crib. The baby was awake, staring at her. "Stop staring at me, you little creep," she muttered. Ethan felt like he had been punched in the stomach, his beautiful, sweet boy. "A creep? God, this place smells like sickness," she complained, spraying some air freshener directly over the cribs. The mist fell on the boys' faces. Liam coughed weakly. Vanessa didn't even look down. "Listen, I need that transfer to go through by Monday. Ethan is distracted. He's pathetic, honestly. He feels so guilty about the cripples that he'll sign anything I put in front of him." Ethan's grip on the steering wheel tightened until the leather creaked. Cripples. She called his sons cripples. The woman he was going to marry, the woman he had brought into his home to help him heal. She was laughing at his pain. She was counting his money while his children suffered. Yeah, "The maid is a problem," Vanessa continued, pacing the room. "She's too attentive. She feeds them fresh food. Can you believe that? I told her to stick to the formula, the one the doctor prescribed. It keeps them calm. The formula." Ethan frowned. The boys had been on a special liquid diet since the accident. The doctors said their stomachs couldn't handle solid food. They were always sleepy, always lethargic. He had assumed it was the trauma. Vanessa hung up the phone and looked at her watch. "Elena!" she screamed. A few seconds later, Elena ran into the room. She was breathless, wearing her blue uniform. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but her expression was fierce. "Yes, Miss Vanessa," Elena said. Her voice was soft, with a slight accent that sounded like music compared to Vanessa's screeching. "Why aren't they dressed?" Vanessa demanded. "I have friends coming over for brunch. I don't want them looking like hospital patients. Put them in the matching outfits and keep them in the back room. I don't want them drooling in front of my guests." "They don't drool, ma'am," Eleanor said, her chin lifted. "And they like the sunlight in here. The back room is cold." Vanessa took a step forward, invading Elena's space. "Excuse me? Did I ask for your opinion? You are the help. You clean the mess. You don't make decisions. If I want them in the closet, you put them in the closet." "I will not put them in a closet," Elena said, her voice shaking but firm. Ethan held his breath. He had never seen anyone stand up to Vanessa. She was terrifying when she didn't get her way. "You're brave when Ethan isn't here, aren't you?" Vanessa sneered. "You think he likes you. You think he looks at you. You're nothing. You're a peasant. Look at you. No makeup, calloused hands. Ethan likes diamonds, darling, not rocks." She laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. Then she walked over to the changing table and picked up a small vial of clear liquid. "Time for their vitamins," Vanessa said, a wicked glint in her eyes. "No!" Elena lunged forward. "They had their medicine already. The doctor said only once a day." "They seem agitated," Vanessa said, uncorking the vial. "They need to relax. My guests can't handle crying babies." "They aren't crying," Elena shouted. She grabbed Vanessa's wrist. Ethan gasped in his car. Touching Vanessa was a death sentence. Vanessa's face went red. She slapped Elena, a hard, cracking sound that echoed through the audio feed. Elena stumbled back, holding her cheek, but she didn't retreat. She stood between Vanessa and the cribs. "You touch me again, and I'll have you arrested for assault," Vanessa hissed. "Now get out. I'll feed them myself." "I'm not leaving them with you," Elena said. She was crying now, silent tears rolling down her face. "You give them too much. It makes them sleep for days. It's not right. Look at their eyes. Their pupils are dilated." Ethan zoomed in on the screen. He looked at his sons. Elena was right. Their eyes looked glassy, drugged. It wasn't paralysis making them lethargic. They were being sedated, heavily sedated. Why? Why would she do that? Because a sleeping child doesn't bother you. Because a sleeping child doesn't need attention. Because a sedated child looks sicker, more helpless, and keeps Ethan distracted and guilty. "It's just vitamins, you stupid girl," Vanessa said, capping the bottle. "Fine. If you want to play hero, you feed them. But if I hear one sound from this room during my brunch, one single whimper, you're fired. And I'll make sure you never work in this country again." Vanessa stormed out, slamming the door. Elena waited until she was gone. Then she collapsed. She fell to her knees in the center of the room, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs. Ethan felt a lump in his throat so big he couldn't swallow. He wanted to drive back right now. He wanted to burst through the doors and throw Vanessa out on the street, but he couldn't. Not yet. He needed to know what the liquid was. He needed to know the extent of the damage, and he needed to see what Elena did next. Elena wiped her face aggressively. She stood up. She walked over to the trash can and spat. She looked at the door with pure hatred. Then her face softened. She turned to the cribs. "It's okay," she whispered. "Shh, the witch is gone." She lifted Liam out of the crib. She placed him on the floor. Then Noah. Then Oliver. "We don't have much time," she whispered to them. "She wants you weak. But we are strong, yes, we are tigers." She smiled at them, a radiant, genuine smile that lit up the gloomy room. And the boys smiled back. It was crooked, weak, but it was a smile. "Okay, Liam, show me," Elena said. She sat on the floor a few feet away from him. She held out a toy, a bright red fire truck. "Come get the truck, Liam. Use your legs." Ethan froze. Use your legs? He was paralyzed. His spinal cord was damaged. The doctors were clear. But on the screen, Liam was struggling. His face turned red with effort. He wasn't just lying there, he was pushing. He was pushing his knees against the carpet. He was dragging his hips forward. It was an inch, maybe 2, but he moved. "Yes, yes, mi amor!" Elena cheered, clapping her hands softly so Vanessa wouldn't hear downstairs. "Good job! Now Noah, your turn!" Ethan watched, tears blurring his vision. They weren't fully paralyzed. They had mobility, limited, weak, but it was there. Why hadn't the doctors seen this? Why hadn't Vanessa told him? Then he realized the horror of it, the sedation, the vitamins. If you drug a child constantly, their muscles atrophy. They stop trying to move because they are too tired. Vanessa wasn't just neglecting them. She was actively keeping them disabled. She was keeping them sick to keep Ethan controlled. And Elena was the only one fighting for them. She was doing physical therapy in secret, hiding it from the woman who wanted them to remain broken dolls. Ethan watched as Elena worked with them for an hour. She was sweating. She was exhausted, but she didn't stop. She massaged their atrophied muscles. She sang songs in Spanish. She told them stories about a magical land where boys could fly. "You will run," she promised Oliver, rubbing his small calves. "One day your daddy will come home and you will run to him. And he will be so happy." Ethan put his head on the steering wheel and wept. He wept for his blindness. He wept for his boys. And he wept for the woman who was saving his life while he treated her like a servant. But the danger wasn't over. On the screen, the door handle turned. Elena didn't hear it. She was too focused on Noah. Vanessa's friend, a woman with short red hair, peeked in. She saw Elena on the floor with the boys. She saw the paralyzed boys moving their legs. The woman's eyes went wide. She closed the door silently. Ethan sat up. Oh no. The friend was going to tell Vanessa. 10 minutes later, the door flew open. Vanessa was there, and she wasn't alone. She had 2 security guards with her. "There she is!" Vanessa screamed, pointing a manicured finger at Elena. "She's hurting them. I saw it on the monitor downstairs. She's twisting their legs. Look at them, they're in pain." It was a lie. A masterful, evil lie. Vanessa had turned the narrative. She was accusing Elena of the very thing she was healing. The guards stepped forward. They were big men. "Grab her," Vanessa ordered. "Get her out of my house and call the police." Elena stood up, backing away, shielding the boys. "No, I was helping them. Look, they can move." "Shut up, you child abuser," Vanessa yelled, slapping Elena again, harder this time. Elena fell back against the crib. The guards grabbed Elena by her arms. She screamed, not for herself, but for the boys. "Ethan," she screamed. "Mr. Caldwell, please, check the cameras, please." She didn't know he was watching. She didn't know he was parked just outside. Ethan started the car. The engine roared to life. He slammed his foot on the gas pedal. The tires screeched against the asphalt. He had to get there. He had to save her. But the driveway was long. And inside the house, Vanessa was smiling. She pulled the vial of medicine out of her pocket. "Take her away," Vanessa told the guards. "I need to calm my poor children down." She approached the triplets. They looked terrified. They knew what was coming, the liquid that made the world go dark. Ethan's SUV tore through the gates, smashing the wooden arm. He was coming, but would he be in time to stop her from giving them the dose that could silence them forever? Because this time, Vanessa's hand was shaking, she was angry, and in her anger she might just pour too much. The sound of the front door crashing open echoed through the mansion like a gunshot. Upstairs in the nursery, the air was thick with tension. Vanessa's hand was hovering over the plastic cup, the sedative ready to be poured down Noah's throat. The two security guards were dragging Elena toward the door, her heels skidding on the carpet as she fought with the strength of a mother lion protecting her cubs. "Get off me!" Elena screamed, her voice raw. "She's poisoning them. Look at the bottle, look at it!" "Shut her up!" Vanessa hissed, her eyes manic. "Get her out of here before—" "Stop!" The command roared from the doorway, loud enough to shake the walls. Ethan Caldwell stood there. His chest was heaving. His suit was soaked from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked wild. He looked dangerous. The room froze. Vanessa dropped the vial. It rolled across the carpet, coming to a stop at Ethan's muddy dress shoes. "Ethan!" Vanessa gasped, her face shifting instantly from malice to a practiced, tearful victimhood. She brought a hand to her chest. "Oh, thank God you're here. I was so scared. This woman, she's gone mad. She attacked me. She was hurting the boys." The guards hesitated, looking from their boss to his fiancée. They loosened their grip on Elena. Elena fell to her knees, gasping for air. She didn't look at Ethan. She looked at the boys. Noah was crying silently in his crib. Liam and Oliver were huddled together, shaking. Ethan walked into the room, slowly. Every step was heavy. He bent down and picked up the vial. He read the label. It was a prescription sedative, strong stuff, the kind used for severe insomnia in adults. He looked at Vanessa. His eyes were cold, unreadable. Inside, a fire was burning him alive. He wanted to scream. He wanted to grab Vanessa and throw her out the window. He had seen everything on the camera. He knew she was lying. But Ethan was a businessman, and he knew that if he acted on impulse now, he might lose. Vanessa was smart. She had lawyers. She could claim it was an accident, or that Elena had switched the bottles. She could sue for custody, dragging this out for years while the boys suffered. He needed her to destroy herself. He needed undeniable public proof. "Release her," Ethan said quietly to the guards. "But sir," one guard started. "Ms. Sterling said—" "I said release her!" Ethan bellowed, his voice cracking with suppressed rage. The guards stepped back. Elena stayed on the floor, trembling. "Ethan, look at her!" Vanessa pleaded, walking over and placing her hands on his wet shoulders. "She's unstable. I caught her twisting their legs. She thinks she's a doctor. I was just trying to give them their vitamins to calm them down after she hurt them." Ethan looked at Elena. She looked up at him, her honey eyes filled with betrayal. She thought he believed the lie. "Is that true, Elena?" Ethan asked, his voice devoid of emotion. "Were you hurting my sons?" "I was helping them walk," Elena whispered, tears mixing with the sweat on her face. "They can walk, Mr. Caldwell. They are not broken." Vanessa laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "Walk? Ethan, darling, listen to her. She's delusional. The doctor said—" "Enough," Ethan cut in. He pocketed the vial. "I will keep this. And I will have the boys examined by my doctor tomorrow. Until then—" He paused. The room held its breath. "Until then, Elena stays," Ethan said. Vanessa's jaw dropped. "What? You can't be serious. She's dangerous." "I need someone to watch them tonight," Ethan lied smoothly. "I'm exhausted. You're upset, and I don't want strangers in the house. Elena stays, but—" He turned to Elena, hardening his expression. "If I see one mark on them, Elena, just one, you will go to jail. Do you understand?" It was a performance, a cruel performance, necessary to buy time. Elena nodded, looking down. She didn't understand why he was being so cold, but she was grateful she wasn't being thrown out. She couldn't leave the boys alone with her. "Fine," Vanessa spat, smoothing her dress, "but don't say I didn't warn you. If something happens to those children, it's on your head." She stormed out of the room. Ethan watched her go. He wanted to run to the boys, to hold them, to apologize to Elena. But the cameras were rolling, and he didn't know if Vanessa was watching from another room. He had to maintain the facade. "Clean them up," Ethan told Elena curtly. Then he turned and left, closing the door behind him. Once in the hallway, Ethan leaned against the wall and slid down until he hit the floor. He buried his face in his hands. He was shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered into the darkness. "Just hold on a little longer." The next day, the atmosphere in the Caldwell mansion was suffocating. It was the day of the annual charity gala, an event Ethan hosted every year. Usually it was held at a hotel, but Vanessa had insisted on hosting it at the estate to show off the family. The house was buzzing with caterers, florists, and musicians. Vanessa was in her element, barking orders and smiling for social media. She seemed to have forgotten the incident in the nursery, or perhaps she had a new plan. She did. In the kitchen, Eleanor was preparing special purees for the boys. She was trying to stay invisible. She knew her time was running out. She had seen the way Vanessa looked at her that morning, like a predator looking at wounded prey. "You," Vanessa said, sweeping into the kitchen in a cloud of hairspray, "leave that. The caterers will handle the food. I need you to serve drinks tonight." "I am the nanny, ma'am," Elena said quietly. "My place is with the children." "The children will be asleep," Vanessa snapped. "Ethan wants you to help downstairs. We are short-staffed. Unless you're too good to serve?" "No, ma'am," Elena said. She needed this job. She needed to protect the boys. "Good. Wear the black uniform and try to look presentable. Though I know that's hard for you." Vanessa walked away, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. As she passed the counter where Elena's purse was sitting, her hand moved fast. Too fast for anyone to see. The party was in full swing by 8 p.m. The living room was filled with Seattle's elite. Men in tuxedos discussed stocks. Women in designer gowns drank champagne and gossiped. Ethan moved through the crowd like a ghost. He shook hands. He smiled. But his eyes were constantly scanning the room, looking for Vanessa. He had sent the vial to a private lab that morning. The results would be back tomorrow. Tonight, he just had to survive the charade. "Ethan!" Vanessa called out, grabbing his arm. She looked stunning in a red velvet dress, the color of fresh blood. "Come, everyone is asking about the wedding." She pulled him toward a group of investors. Ethan played his part, but his stomach turned every time she touched him. Elena was circulating with a tray of champagne flutes. She felt out of place. She felt the eyes of the wealthy guests on her, judging her simple appearance. She just wanted to go back upstairs to the nursery. Suddenly, a shrill scream cut through the music. "My watch! My diamond watch! It's gone!" The room went silent. Vanessa was standing in the center of the room, clutching her wrist. "Oh my God," she cried, looking around frantically. "It was a gift from Ethan. It's worth $50,000. Someone stole it." "Calm down, Vanessa," Ethan said, stepping forward. "You probably left it upstairs." "No, I had it on 5 minutes ago." She pointed a trembling finger at the staff. "It was one of them. I felt someone bump into me." Her eyes locked on Elena. "You," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with venom. "You bumped into me near the kitchen door." "Me?" Eleanor gasped, clutching the tray. "No, Ms. Vanessa, I haven't been near you." "Liar!" Vanessa shrieked. "Check her. Someone check her pockets." "Vanessa, this is ridiculous," Ethan tried to intervene, but the crowd was murmuring. The investors were watching. If he didn't act, he would look weak. "If she has nothing to hide, she won't mind," Vanessa challenged. Before Ethan could stop it, Vanessa lunged forward and grabbed the pocket of Elena's apron. She pulled. A heavy, diamond-encrusted watch tumbled out and crashed onto the marble floor. The sound was deafening. Elena stared at the watch in horror. "No, I didn't. Thief!" Vanessa screamed. "I knew it! You're not just a child abuser. You're a thief. You were going to steal from us after everything we did for you." The guests gasped. People shook their heads in disgust. "How awful," a woman whispered. "Can't trust the help these days." Eleanor looked at Ethan. Her eyes were pleading. "Please tell them. Please save me." Ethan looked at the watch. He looked at Vanessa's triumphant face. He knew it was a setup. He knew it with every fiber of his being. But he also knew that if he defended her now, in front of 50 witnesses and without proof, Vanessa would destroy them both. She would claim Ethan was sleeping with the maid. She would claim bias. She would take the kids and run. He had to make the hardest decision of his life. "Elena," Ethan said, his voice cold as ice, "go to your room. Pack your things. Mr. Caldwell." Elena's voice broke. "Now!" Ethan shouted, shattering the silence. Elena flinched as if he had hit her. She turned and ran, blinded by tears, pushing through the crowd of judging faces. Vanessa smirked, hooking her arm through Ethan's. "I told you, darling, she was trash. I'll call the police in the morning. Let's not ruin the party." Ethan didn't answer. He watched Elena disappear up the stairs, and in his pocket his hand clenched into a fist, so tight his fingernails drew blood. "I will fix this," he promised silently. "I will burn your world down for this, Vanessa. Just wait." But for tonight, evil had won. The rain had returned. It battered the roof of the estate, mirroring the storm inside Elena's heart. She was in her small room in the servants' quarters, shivering. Her suitcase was open on the bed, half-packed. She wasn't crying anymore. She was past tears. She was in a state of cold, numb shock. She had been branded a thief, an abuser. She would never work again. She would probably be deported, but that wasn't what hurt the most. What tore her soul apart was the thought of Noah, Liam, and Oliver, alone, up there in that cold, dark nursery with her. She looked at the clock. 2 a.m. The party was over. The house was silent. "I can't leave them," she whispered to the empty room. "I can't." She knew the police were coming in the morning. Vanessa had promised. This was her last night of freedom, and she wasn't going to spend it sleeping. She took off her shoes. She opened her door. The hallway was dark. She crept up the back stairs, the ones the servants used. She knew where the cameras were in the hallways, and she dodged them instinctively, but she knew she couldn't hide in the nursery. "Let him see," she thought. "Let Ethan see. If he thinks I am a thief, fine, but I will say goodbye to my boys." She reached the nursery door. It was unlocked. She slipped inside. The smell hit her immediately. That stale chemical smell of the sedative. She rushed to the cribs. The boys were asleep, but it wasn't a natural sleep. Their breathing was shallow. Their skin was pale. "Oh, my babies," Elena wept softly, stroking Liam's hair. "What has she done to you?" She knew she shouldn't wake them. It was cruel. But she needed to know they could still move. She needed to know she hadn't imagined the progress. She lowered the railing of the cribs. She lifted them out one by one, placing them on the soft rug. "Wake up, little tigers," she whispered, "one last time, for Elena." Noah stirred. He blinked his eyes open. They were groggy, clouded by the drugs. He looked at Elena, and a flicker of recognition passed through him. He made a small sound. A coo. Elena smiled through her tears. "Yes, I am here." Down in the study, Ethan was not sleeping. He was sitting in the dark, the blue light of his laptop illuminating his face. He had a glass of whiskey in his hand, but he hadn't taken a sip in hours. He was watching the feed. When Elena entered the room, his heart leaped. He had almost gone up there himself, unable to bear the thought of her leaving. But seeing her sneak back in, It confirmed everything. A thief would have run. A guilty woman would have fled the state. Elena went back to the children. He watched as she placed them on the floor. He saw her massaging their legs, trying to wake their muscles up from the drug-induced coma Vanessa had put them in. "Come on," Ethan whispered, leaning closer to the screen. "Show me." On the screen, something incredible happened. Maybe it was the love in Elena's voice. Maybe it was the fear that they would never see her again. Or maybe, just maybe, the boys understood that they had to fight. Oliver, the youngest, rolled over. He pushed himself up on his hands and knees. Elena gasped. Ethan gasped. "Come to me, Oliver," Elena whispered, opening her arms. "Come on!" The boy crawled. It was shaky. It was uncoordinated. But he crawled 3 feet across the rug and collapsed into Elena's lap. Then Liam. He didn't crawl. He grabbed the edge of the ottoman. He pulled. His little legs shook violently. He locked his knees. He stood up. Ethan covered his mouth with his hand to stifle a sob. His son was standing. The son the doctor said would be in a wheelchair forever. "Look at you!" Elena cried softly, kissing Liam's face. "You are so strong. You are a miracle." She hugged all 3 of them, rocking back and forth. "You have to be strong now," she told them. "I have to go away. The bad lady, she doesn't want me here. But you remember you can walk. Show your daddy. When he is ready to see, show him." Ethan's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. When he is ready to see. She thought he was blind. She thought he was just another rich, careless father. "I'm ready," Ethan said to the screen, tears streaming down his face. "I see you, Elena. I promise. I see you." Suddenly the door to the nursery opened. Ethan sat up straight. It was Vanessa. She was wearing her silk robe, a glass of wine in her hand. She looked disheveled. She must have heard the noise. Eleanor froze, clutching the boys. Vanessa stared at the scene. She saw the boys on the floor. She saw Liam holding onto the ottoman. She didn't look surprised. She looked annoyed. "I thought I told you to pack," Vanessa slurred. She walked into the room, closing the door. "I was just saying goodbye," Elena said, lowering her head. "Goodbye?" Vanessa laughed. She walked over and kicked the toy blocks across the room. "You were trying to fix them again. God, you are relentless. Why can't you just accept that they are broken? It's better this way." "Better for who?" Elena asked, finding a sudden surge of courage. "For them or for you?" Vanessa crouched down, bringing her face close to Elena's. "For me, you stupid girl," Vanessa whispered. The microphone on the camera picked it up perfectly, crystal clear. Ethan hit the record button. He wanted to make sure every second of this was saved. "You see," Vanessa continued, gesturing to the triplets with her wine glass. "Ethan is a weak man. He feels guilty. As long as these brats are sick, paralyzed and useless, he needs me. He feels like he owes me for taking care of them. If they walk, if they talk, then I'm just the stepmother. But if they are invalids, I am the saint." She took a sip of wine. "Plus," she added with a wicked grin, "the trust fund for disabled dependents is double the normal amount. Did you know that? Millions of dollars, managed by the legal guardian until they are 25. If they get better, the money gets locked away." Elena stared at her in horror. You are keeping them paralyzed for money?" "I'm securing my future," Vanessa shrugged, "and you almost ruined it with your little massages and your organic food. But don't worry. Tomorrow you'll be in a cell, and by next week I'll find a doctor who knows how to write the prescriptions I need. These boys will be vegetable soup by the time I marry their father." Ethan felt a coldness wash over him that was terrifying. The sadness was gone. The guilt was gone. All that was left was a pure, white-hot rage. She had confessed. She had laid out her entire plan. She had admitted to poisoning his children, defrauding him, and framing Eleanor. And she had done it all while looking directly at the hidden camera lens, thinking it was just a smoke detector. Vanessa stood up. "Now, get out, or I'll wake Ethan up and tell him you were trying to kidnap them." Eleanor stood up slowly. She placed the boys back in their cribs. She kissed each of them on the forehead. "You will never win," Elena said softly to Vanessa. "God sees everything." "God isn't here," Vanessa sneered. "Only me." Elena walked out of the room, defeated. Vanessa stayed for a moment, looking at the boys with a look of pure contempt. She turned off the light and left. Ethan sat in the dark. The recording stopped. He reached for his phone. He dialed a number. "This is Ethan Caldwell," he said, his voice deadly calm. "I need the legal team here at 6:00 a.m. And get the chief of police on the line, personally." He looked at the frozen image of Elena on his screen. "God isn't there," Ethan whispered, "but the devil is about to meet her match." He stood up and poured his whiskey into the sink. The game was over. It was time for the slaughter. The sun rose over Seattle, but it brought no warmth to the Caldwell estate. The light was grey, filtering through the high windows of Ethan's study like a judgment. The house was quiet, that heavy, expensive silence that usually signifies comfort, but today it felt like the breath before a scream. Ethan hadn't slept, not 1 minute. He sat in his leather chair, his eyes red-rimmed, staring at the piece of paper in his hand. The private courier had arrived at 6 a.m. sharp. It was the toxicology report from the lab regarding the liquid in the vial he had confiscated from the nursery. The words on the page blurred before his eyes, not because he couldn't read them, but because his brain refused to accept the enormity of the evil they described. Benzodiazepines, high concentration, muscle relaxants, contraindicated for children under 12. Side effects: muscle atrophy, cognitive delay, respiratory depression, paralysis. Ethan crushed the paper in his fist. His knuckles turned white. It wasn't just vitamins to make them sleep. It wasn't just negligence. It was chemical warfare. Vanessa had been systematically poisoning his sons, day by day, drop by drop, turning lively, healing children into vegetables just to keep him trapped in a cycle of guilt and dependency. She had built her future on the broken bodies of his children. A knock at the door broke the silence. It was a timid, soft knock, the kind made by someone who expects to be yelled at. "Come in," Ethan said, his voice raspy. The door creaked open. It was Elena. She wasn't wearing her uniform. She was wearing a simple grey coat and jeans. Her hair was pulled back, her face devoid of makeup, revealing swollen eyes and cheeks stained with dried tears. Beside her stood a battered old suitcase. The sight of that suitcase hit Ethan harder than the toxicology report. It represented her total defeat. She was leaving. She was accepting the injustice because she had no power to fight it. "Mr. Caldwell," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. I'm ready to go. I just wanted to give you the keys to the nursery." She stepped forward, placing a small ring of keys on his massive mahogany desk. She didn't look at him. She couldn't. The shame was radiating off her. "I know what you think of me," she continued, her voice breaking. "I know Miss Vanessa told you I am a thief, and maybe it is easier for you to believe that. But please, sir, for the sake of Noah, Liam, and Oliver, get a new doctor. Don't let her give them the medicine, please." Ethan looked at her. He saw the calloused hands that had massaged life back into his son's legs. He saw the humble clothes of a woman who sent money home to her family. He saw the integrity burning in her eyes, even now when she was being crushed. "You're leaving?" Ethan asked, standing up slowly. "You fired me," Elena said, confusion flickering across her face. "Last night, you said to pack." Ethan walked around the desk. He moved into her personal space. Elena flinched, expecting anger. "I didn't fire you because I believed her, Elena," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a low, intense rumble. "I fired you to save you." Elena looked up, stunned. "What? If I hadn't sent you to your room last night, Vanessa would have had you arrested right there on the carpet," Ethan explained. I needed time. I needed proof. Proof? Eleanor shook her head. But she has the watch. She has the witnesses. And I have eyes, Ethan said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen and turned it toward her. It was a still image from the video feed. It showed Vanessa in the nursery holding the wine glass, her face twisted in a sneer as she confessed to the empty room. Elena gasped. She covered her mouth with her hand. You saw? I heard everything, Ethan said. I heard her call them burdens. I heard her admit to the poisoning, and I saw what you did, Elena. I saw you make them walk. Tears fresh and hot spilled from Elena's eyes. She collapsed against the edge of the desk, the relief so powerful it nearly buckled her knees. Oh, God. Oh, thank God. I thought I was crazy. I thought no one would ever know. Ethan reached out, and for the first time, he touched her. Not as an employer, but as a man. He placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. You are not crazy, he said firmly. You are the only sane person in this house. You're the only reason my sons have a future. So, what do we do? Elena wiped her face, a new strength entering her voice. Do we call the police? Is she in jail? Not yet, Ethan said, his eyes darkening. Police are too good for her right now. If I call them now, she gets a lawyer, she gets bail, she spins a story to the press about how I framed her. He walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling grounds of the estate. No, he said cold, I want her destroyed. I want her to lose everything, her reputation, her friends, her freedom and her pride. I want her to walk into a trap she set for herself. He turned back to Elena. Can you be strong for one more hour? Can you pretend? Pretend? I have invited her friends, her lawyer, the people she cares about most, her audience, Ethan said. We are having a farewell lunch. She thinks it's a farewell for you. She thinks we are celebrating our upcoming wedding. Elena shivered. You want me to serve her? I want you to be there, Ethan said. I want you to see the look on her face when the world finds out who she really is. Will you do this for me, for the boys? Eleanor looked at the suitcase. Then she looked at Ethan. She took a deep breath, straightening her spine. The crying maid was gone. The lioness was back. I will do it, she said. Just then, the heavy oak door of the study flew open without a knock. Vanessa walked in. She looked fresh, vibrant, victorious. She was wearing a white dress that looked disturbingly like a wedding gown, clutching a mimosa. Ethan, darling, she chirped, breezing into the room. She stopped when she saw Elena. Her smile curled into a smirk. Oh, you're still here? I thought the trash truck came early on Tuesdays. Elena didn't look down. She looked Vanessa straight in the eye. Ethan turned his chair slowly. He kept his face perfectly neutral. The mask of the defeated, tired billionaire. She was just returning the keys, Vanessa, Ethan said calmly. She's leaving after lunch. After lunch? Vanessa pouted. Why let her stay? She ruins the appetite. I need her to help serve the guests, Ethan lied smoothly. The catering staff is short one person, and since I haven't paid her severance yet, she agreed to work one last shift. Vanessa laughed, shaking her head. You are too soft, Ethan. Making a thief serve lunch? Fine. But if she touches the silverware, I'm calling the cops immediately. She walked over to Ethan and kissed him on the cheek. Ethan had to use every ounce of his willpower not to recoil. Her perfume, once pleasant, now smelled like rot to him. Hurry up, darling, Vanessa whispered in his ear. My lawyer is here with the papers for the trust fund transfer. We can sign them before the toasts. Perfect, Ethan said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I can't wait to sign everything. Vanessa beamed. She turned to Elena. Well, don't just stand there like a statue. Go to the kitchen and wash your hands. You look filthy. Vanessa turned and sashayed out of the room, closing the door. Ethan and Elena stood in silence for a moment. The air was electric. She has no idea, Eleanor whispered. No, Ethan said, picking up the toxicology report and folding it into his jacket pocket. She thinks she's winning. That's what makes the fall so much harder. He walked to the door and held it open for Elena. After you, he said. It was a small gesture, but it shifted the universe. He wasn't treating her like the help. He was treating her like a partner. As they walked down the grand staircase toward the dining room, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses drifted up. The vultures were gathering. Ethan checked his watch. 12:30 p.m. In 30 minutes, Vanessa Sterling's life would end, and the triplets' life would begin. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked at the bottom of the stairs. Eleanor took a breath. She thought of Liam standing up. She thought of Oliver crawling. She thought of Noah's smile. "I am ready," she said. They stepped into the lion's den. The dining room of the Caldwell estate was a masterpiece of opulence. A crystal chandelier the size of a small car hung over a table set for 12. There were white roses everywhere, Vanessa's favorite. The room was filled with the chatter of Seattle's social climbers. There was Mr. Sterling, Vanessa's father and lawyer, a man with a smile like a shark. There were her bridesmaids, women who looked at their reflections in the silverware more than they looked at each other. And there was Ethan, sitting at the head of the table, looking like a king on his throne. Vanessa sat to his right, radiating triumph. She kept touching his arm, laughing too loudly at her own jokes. Elena stood by the sideboard, holding a pitcher of iced water. She was invisible to them, just a uniform, just a pair of hands. "So, Ethan," Mr. Sterling boomed, cutting into his steak, "Vanessa tells me you're finally ready to modernize the family trust. Smart move, very smart. Keeping assets fluid is key in this economy." "Yes," Ethan said, taking a slow sip of his water. "Vanessa has been very persuasive. She made me realize that I've been neglecting the boy's future." "Exactly," Vanessa chimed in, squeezing Ethan's hand. "It's all for the children, really. With their condition, they need special care, expensive care, and I just want to make sure I have the authority to give them the best life possible, even if Ethan is busy with the company." "A saint," one of the bridesmaids cooed. "You are a saint, Nessie. Taking on 3 special needs children? I couldn't do it." "It takes a big heart," Vanessa sighed dramatically. "It's exhausting, truly. But when I look at their sweet, blank faces, I know I have to do it." Elena's hand gripped the handle of the pitcher so tight her knuckles turned white. Blank faces. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw the ice water in Vanessa's face. Ethan cleared his throat. The sound cut through the room. "Actually," Ethan said, standing up, he tapped his glass with a spoon. Cling, cling, cling. The room went silent. All eyes turned to him. "I would like to propose a toast," Ethan said, raising his glass. "Oh, lovely," Vanessa clapped. "To the truth," Ethan said. Vanessa frowned slightly. That wasn't the toast she expected. She expected, "To my beautiful bride." "The truth is a funny thing," Ethan continued, his voice steady but carrying a dangerous edge. "We think we can hide it. We bury it under money, under lies, under smiles. But eventually, it always walks out. Sometimes it even crawls." Mr. Sterling put down his fork. He sensed the shift in the atmosphere. He was a lawyer, after all. He knew the smell of danger. "Ethan, are you okay?" Vanessa asked, her smile faltering. "I'm better than okay, Vanessa. I'm awake," Ethan said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black remote control. "I prepared a little video for today," Ethan announced to the table, "a tribute to the woman who is about to become the mother of my children." Vanessa relaxed. Her ego took over. "Oh, Ethan, you shouldn't have. Is it a montage of our trips?" "Something like that," Ethan said. He pointed the remote at the massive 80-inch television mounted above the fireplace. The screen flickered to life, but it wasn't a montage of Paris or Milan. It was the grainy, black-and-white footage of the nursery. The guests looked confused. "What is this?" someone whispered. On the screen, the date stamp was from yesterday. The audio crackled. "Stop staring at me, you little creep!" Vanessa's voice boomed through the high-quality speakers of the dining room. The real Vanessa dropped her fork. It clattered loudly onto her plate. On the screen, the video, Vanessa sprayed air freshener over the babies. "God, this place smells like sickness." The guests gasped. Mr. Sterling's face went grey. "Ethan, turn this off!" Vanessa hissed, standing up. This is out of context. It's a joke." "Sit down," Ethan roared. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Vanessa sat, stunned. The video cut to the next clip. Vanessa slapping Elena. The sound of the slap echoed in the silent dining room. "You touch me again, and I'll have you arrested. It's just vitamins, you stupid girl." Then the footage of the confession. Vanessa looking directly at the camera smoke detector. "I'm securing my future. If they walk, if they talk, then I'm just the stepmother. But if they are invalids, I am the saint." The room was deathly silent. You could hear a pin drop, the brutality of her words, the naked greed, the cruelty. It was undeniable. Vanessa was shaking. She looked at her friends. They were looking at her with horror. One of the bridesmaids physically moved her chair away, but the video wasn't done. "And now," Ethan said softly, "the part you missed, Vanessa." The screen changed. It showed Eleanor. It showed her crying, kissing the boys. And then it showed Liam standing up. It showed Oliver crawling. The guests murmured in shock. "They can walk. I thought she said they were paralyzed." "They were never paralyzed," Ethan said, his voice breaking with emotion. "They were drugged by her." He pointed a finger at Vanessa. "She has been feeding my 2-year-old sons muscle relaxants and sedatives for 6 months. She stole their voices. She stole their strength, just so she could get her hands on the trust fund." Vanessa stood up, knocking her chair over. "It's a lie. It's a deepfake. AI generated it. You can't prove anything." "I have the toxicology report," Ethan shouted, throwing the crumpled paper onto the table. It landed in the butter dish. "And I have the doctor's statement from this morning. Their blood is full of your poison." Mr. Sterling stood up. "Ethan, we should discuss this in private. There are liabilities." "Sit down, Frank," Ethan snapped at the lawyer. "Or do you want to be named as a co-conspirator?" Mr. Sterling sat down instantly. Vanessa looked around. She was trapped. Her face contorted into a mask of pure ugliness. The beauty was gone. The monster was out. "Fine," she screamed. "Fine. So I drugged them. Who cares? They're broken anyway. You should thank me, Ethan. I kept them quiet. I kept them out of your way so you could run your precious company. I did the dirty work you were too weak to do." "Oh, my God," a guest whispered. "And you?" Vanessa spun around to face Elena. "You little rat. You think you won. You're still just a servant. He'll never want you." "She is not a servant," Ethan said, walking around the table. He stood next to Elena. "She is the woman who saved my children when I was too blind to see." Sirens wailed in the distance. They were getting louder. They were coming up the driveway. Vanessa's eyes widened. She realized finally what was happening. "You called the police," she whispered. "I called everyone," Ethan said cold. "Child Protective Services, the district attorney, and the press." "The press?" Vanessa gasped. "They are waiting at the gate," Ethan said. "They want to know why the socialite of the year is being arrested for attempted murder of 3 minors. Vanessa tried to run. She actually bolted for the French doors leading to the garden, but the doors opened before she could reach them. 2 uniformed officers stepped in, followed by a detective in a cheap suit. "Vanessa Sterling?" the detective asked. "Now get away from me. Do you know who I am?" Vanessa shrieked, backing away. "You have the right to remain silent," the detective said, grabbing her wrists and clicking the handcuffs into place. The sound was the most satisfying thing Ethan had ever heard. "Daddy! Daddy, do something!" Vanessa screamed at her father. Mr. Sterling looked at his phone, pretending not to hear. He was already drafting a press release distancing himself from his daughter. As they dragged Vanessa out, kicking and screaming, her heels scraping across the expensive marble floor, she locked eyes with Elena. "You'll pay for this!" she screamed. Elena didn't flinch. She took a step forward. "No," Elena said calmly. "You are the one who will pay. Every day, for a long, long time." The doors closed. The screaming faded. The room was still. The guests were frozen, unsure if they should leave or apologize. Ethan looked at them. "Get out," he said quietly. "All of you." "The show is over." They scrambled. Purses were grabbed, coats were snatched. Within 2 minutes, the dining room was empty. Only Ethan and Elena remained. Ethan slumped against the table, the adrenaline leaving his body. He felt exhausted. Elena poured a glass of water from her pitcher. She handed it to him. "Drink," she said gently. "It is over." Ethan took the glass. His hands were shaking. He looked at Elena. "They took her," he said. "She's gone." "Yes," Elena said. "And the boys are upstairs, waiting for their lunch, their real lunch." Ethan laughed. It was a weak, watery laugh, but it was real. "I don't know how to thank you," Ethan said. "I don't know where to start." "Start by going upstairs," Eleanor said, taking the pitcher from him and setting it down. "Start by being their father." Ethan nodded. He straightened his tie. He looked at the stairs. "Will you come with me?" he asked. "I don't think I can do it alone, not yet." Eleanor smiled. "I am not going anywhere, Mr. Caldwell." "Ethan," he corrected her. "Please, call me Ethan." "Okay, Ethan." They walked out of the dining room together, leaving the cold remnants of the party behind, heading up toward the nursery where 3 little boys were waiting to show their father a miracle. The sirens had faded. The flashing blue and red lights that had painted the walls of the dining room were gone, replaced by the calm, steady light of the afternoon sun. The guests had fled, scattering like cockroaches when the lights turn on, leaving behind half-eaten meals and a silence that felt heavy, but clean. Ethan Caldwell stood at the bottom of the stairs, his hand resting on the polished wood of the banister. He looked up. For years, that staircase had felt like a mountain he couldn't climb. It led to a place of pain, a place where his broken children lived in the shadows. But today, with Elena standing beside him, it didn't look like a mountain. It looked like a bridge. "I don't know if they will recognize me," Ethan admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I've been a ghost to them. I came in, kissed their foreheads while they slept, and left. I let her take over. I abandoned them, Elena." Elena turned to him. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She didn't say, "It's okay," because it wasn't okay. She reached out and took his hand. A bold move, a breach of every professional boundary, but those boundaries had burned down the moment Vanessa was dragged out in handcuffs. "They don't need a perfect father, Ethan," she said softly. "They just need you. They need to know that the big shadow in the doorway is actually the man who loves them. Come. I will introduce you." They walked up the stairs together. When they entered the nursery, the air was different. The smell of sickness, of that cloying air freshener Vanessa used to mask the scent of neglect, was fading. Eleanor had opened the windows. The fresh Seattle breeze, smelling of pine and rain, filled the room. Noah, Liam, and Oliver were in their cribs. They were awake. When the door opened, all 3 boys flinched. It was a small, instinctive reaction that broke Ethan's heart all over again. They expected Vanessa. They expected the pinch, the cold voice, the bitter taste of the medicine. But when they saw Elena, their shoulders dropped. Liam let out a small, gurgling sound of relief. "It's okay, little tigers," Elena cooed, her voice washing over them like warm water. "The witch is gone. She is never coming back." She walked to the cribs and lowered the railings. "Look who is here. Look who wants to say hello." She gestured to Ethan. Ethan took a step forward. He felt terrified. He had negotiated billion-dollar mergers. He had stared down hostile boards of directors, but facing his 3 two-year-old sons made his knees shake. He knelt down on the rug. He was now at their eye level. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi, boys." Noah stared at him. The boy's eyes were still a bit glassy from the lingering sedatives, but there was a spark of curiosity. He reached out a hand through the bars. Ethan froze. He looked at Eleanor. "Take his hand," she encouraged him. Ethan reached out. His large, rough hand engulfed Noah's tiny fingers. The skin was warm. It was real. "I'm sorry," Ethan choked out, tears spilling freely now, washing away the stoic mask of the CEO. "I am so sorry. I didn't see. I promise you I will never look away again." As if understanding the promise, Liam made a noise. He pulled himself up on the bars of his crib. It was shaky, his little legs trembling with the effort, but he stood. He looked at his father, and then, for the first time in his life, he smiled at Ethan. It wasn't a perfect smile. It was crooked, drool running down his chin, but to Ethan it was brighter than the sun. "He's standing," Ethan gasped, wiping his eyes. "He's really standing." "He is strong," Elena said, pride beaming from her face. "They all are. They just needed a reason to stand." The next few weeks were not a fairy tale. I want to tell you that everything was magical instantly, but that would be a lie. And we are done with lies in this house. Recovery was brutal. The boys went through withdrawal. The drugs Vanessa had been feeding them were potent, and their little bodies screamed for the chemical comfort. There were nights when Oliver wouldn't stop screaming, his body shaking with tremors. There were days when Noah refused to eat, vomiting up the fresh, healthy food Elena prepared because his stomach was so used to the synthetic formula. But Ethan didn't hire a night nurse. He didn't hire a team of doctors to keep the boys in a clinic. He moved his office into the nursery. He learned to change diapers. He learned to hold a screaming child for 4 hours straight at 3:00 a.m., rocking them until his own back ached. He learned the specific rhythm of patting that calmed Liam down. And through it all, Elena was his general. "No, don't pick him up yet," she would say during their physical therapy sessions on the floor. "Let him try to reach the toy. He needs to build the muscle." Ethan watched her work with awe. One evening, after a particularly grueling session where all 3 boys had managed to crawl across the room, Ethan found Eleanor in the kitchen making tea. "You never told me," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Told you what?" she asked, not turning around. "That you weren't just a maid. I watched you today. You knew exactly which muscles to target. You knew how to check their reflexes. You're a professional." Elena turned, holding the mug with both hands. She looked down. "In my country, I was a pediatric physical therapist. I worked in a hospital for 5 years. I helped children who had been in accidents, children born with cerebral palsy." "Why are you scrubbing floors in Seattle then?" Ethan asked gently. "My license." "It doesn't transfer easily," she admitted. "The exams cost thousands of dollars. The English requirements are very high. I needed money to send to my mother. So I took the job that paid. Housekeeping." Ethan shook his head, amazed. "You saved them. A doctor would have just looked at their charts and prescribed more pills. You looked at them." "I saw life in them," Elena said simply. "I couldn't let her put that light out." Ethan walked over to her. The kitchen was dimly lit. The house was quiet. The distance between them felt charged, electric. "I want to help you," Ethan said. "I want to pay for your exams. I want you to get your license here. You shouldn't be cleaning toilets, Elena. You have a gift." Elena looked up at him, her honey eyes wide. "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't have to," Ethan said, his voice dropping an octave. "I want to, because I don't want you to leave, ever. But I don't want you to stay just because you're the nanny." He reached out and tucked a strand of loose hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her jawline. Elena leaned into his touch, just a fraction of an inch. "I'm not planning on leaving," she whispered. 3 months later. The seasons had changed. The dreary Seattle rain had given way to a glorious, blooming spring. The gardens of the Caldwell estate, once manicured and lifeless, were now chaos. Why? Because there were toys everywhere. A red tricycle was overturned near the rose bushes. A soccer ball was floating in the fountain, and the sound of laughter, high-pitched, shrieking, joyous laughter, echoed off the stone walls of the mansion. Ethan sat on the patio, a cup of coffee in his hand, watching the miracle. Noah was chasing a butterfly, his legs pumping steadily. He still had a bit of a limp, a reminder of the atrophy, but he was fast. Liam and Oliver were wrestling on the grass, rolling over each other like puppies. They weren't broken dolls anymore. They were chaotic, loud, messy, wonderful toddlers. The legal battle had been swift and vicious. Vanessa's trial was the talk of the nation. The video footage was damning. The toxicology reports were undeniable. She tried to plead insanity, then she tried to blame Ethan, but the jury didn't buy it. She was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for aggravated child abuse and fraud. Her father, Mr. Sterling, was disbarred and was facing his own charges for embezzlement. The empire of lies had crumbled, leaving the Caldwell family standing in the ruins, stronger than before. "They are getting fast," a voice said from behind him. Ethan smiled without turning. He knew that voice better than his own heartbeat now. Eleanor walked out onto the patio. She wasn't wearing a uniform. She was wearing a yellow sundress that caught the sunlight. She looked radiant. "Noah almost caught the cat this morning," Ethan laughed. "I think we need to sign him up for track and field." Elena sat down next to him, not on a separate chair, but on the arm of his lounge chair. Her hand rested naturally on his shoulder. "They have a checkup next week," she reminded him. "The specialist thinks Oliver might need braces for his ankles for a few months, just to support the growth." "Whatever they need," Ethan said, "we'll handle it." "We," Elena repeated. She liked that word. Ethan set his coffee down. He turned his body to face her. He took her hand, the one that had held the mop, the one that had held the medicine bottle, the one that had held his son's when he couldn't. "Elena," he started, his throat going dry. "I've been thinking." "That's dangerous," she teased, smiling. "I've been thinking about the contract," he said. Elena's smile faded slightly. "The contract? Is something wrong? Do you want me to sign the NDA again?" "No," Ethan said quickly. "I want to terminate it." Elena froze. "Terminate my employment?" "Yes," Ethan said. "I'm firing you. As of this moment, you are no longer the maid. You are no longer the nanny." Elena pulled her hand back, her eyes filling with sudden panic. "But why? Did I do something wrong?" "Ethan, please, the boys—" "Let me finish," Ethan interrupted, grabbing her hand back and holding it tight. He slid off the chair and down onto one knee on the patio stones. Eleanor gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. "I'm firing you because I can't be in love with my employee," Ethan said, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made the world spin. "And I am in love with you, Elena. I have been in love with you since the moment I saw you on that camera, fighting for my children in the middle of the night. You didn't just heal their legs. You healed this house. You healed me." He reached into his pocket. There was no diamond the size of a skating rink, no gaudy show of wealth. It was a simple, elegant ring with 3 small sapphires, one for each boy, and a diamond in the center. "I don't want a nanny for my children," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I want a mother for them, and I want a partner for me. Elena Ross, will you marry us?" Elena looked at him. Then she looked at the lawn where the 3 boys had stopped playing. They were watching, sensing something important was happening. "Did Daddy fall down?" Liam shouted from the grass. Elena laughed, a sound that was half sob, half joy. "No, mi amor," she called back. "Daddy is just asking for help to get up." She looked back at Ethan. Tears streamed down her face, but they were happy tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." Ethan slid the ring onto her finger. He stood up and pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home after a long, cold war. The boys cheered, not knowing why, but knowing that everyone was happy. They ran toward the patio, crashing into Ethan and Elena's legs, a tangle of small arms and laughter. Ethan scooped them up one by one until they were all in a heap on the lounge chair. A family, not bound by blood, but bound by something much stronger. Bound by the choice to love, the choice to fight, and the choice to never look away. Final thoughts. So, what is the lesson here? We live in a world obsessed with appearances. Vanessa had the perfect face, the perfect clothes, the perfect words. She looked like a mother, but she was a monster. Elena wore a uniform, had messy hair and rough hands. She looked like a servant, but she was a queen. Ethan learned the hard way that you cannot judge the heart by the title on a business card. He learned that money can build a house, but only love can build a home. And the camera, the hidden camera that started it all? Ethan kept it. He put it in a box in his desk drawer, not to spy on anyone, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes, to see the truth, you have to stop listening to the lies people tell you and watch what they do when they think no one is looking, because in the dark, true character comes out. Vanessa showed her darkness. Elena showed her light. And thanks to that light, 3 little boys are running in a garden today, chasing butterflies, with a father who adores them and a mother who saved them. Call to action. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that every child deserves a protector like Elena, please share this story with your friends. Do you think Vanessa got what she deserved with 25 years, or should it have been life? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about justice, love, and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. Until next time, remember, the truth always finds a way to walk out. The end.